extremely excited. Today was her first day at Berriton Primary and she was joining Miss Hart's class. Erica had moved to Berriton over the Christmas holidays as her mum got a new job at the hospital in Great Popsford, the nearest town. They had bought a lovely little cottage right in the middle of the village. The estate agent promised Erica's mum and dad that the wisteria around the front door would bloom beautifully in the spring, but now, in the middle of the deepest winter, there were just bare branches framing the door. Erica's dad said the branches would be perfect for hanging Christmas lights from, but they hadn't got round to it this year because they were too busy unpacking. So Erica had everything crossed for a Christmassy front door next year. The cottage had a kitchen, a sitting room, and a third room which the estate agent had called a dining room, but Erica and her brother Timothy were using it as a playroom instead. They had managed to squeeze a little table into the kitchen, so they didn't need a dining room. Upstairs was a big bedroom for Erica's mum and dad, and 2 little rooms for Erica and Timothy. Erica was super excited about moving house, but Timothy wasn't. He had got into a right grump and stuck his cute little bottom lip out when mum and dad told him. So they promised him a new bunk bed in his new room to cheer him up. He was very pleased with it and alternated sleeping in the top bunk and in the bottom. Erica was equally pleased with her lovely bed, the same one she has always had. It was the perfect bed for a little girl with white metal bars, and today she had her favourite duvet cover on, pale pink and white stripes running from one end to the other. Erica crawled out of bed and immediately headed over to where her uniform was hanging. She had a purple polo shirt underneath a grey pleated dress, then a knitted purple jumper on top. It was a different kind of jumper to the one she wore at Trimble Primary, her old school. That was more of a kind of a tracksuit sweater, so Erica felt extra smart when she pulled it on over her head. Erica bowled into her mum and dad's room and was relieved to find they were not in there, so at least she wouldn't have to wake them up. She found both her parents downstairs, drinking coffee in the kitchen. "Good morning, darling," her mum said as Erica joined them. "Gosh, you're all ready to go and it's only 7 o'clock. Erica grinned. "I think you're forgetting something, Mummy," she said as she picked up a strand of her brown hair and waved it around. "Ah, yes. Now, which style are we having today?" asked her mum, before dragging Erica back upstairs into the hairdressing salon, as she called it. They agreed on pigtails. Those are bunches for the boys and dads listening to this. And Erica's mum tied a purple ribbon on the end of each one. After a delicious breakfast of scrambled egg and toast, Erica was ready to go, but it was still only 8 o'clock. The wait was unbearable. Erica watched her parents both get themselves ready for work. Then she watched Timothy get grumpily out of bed. She watched him run away from Mum a few times, and then she watched as Mum caught him by the ankle and pinned him down to get him dressed. She watched as Mum had a second cup of coffee and complained about Timothy to her dad. Finally, she watched Mum and Dad work together to strap Timothy into the car, high-five each other, and kiss goodbye. Then Erica jumped into the seat next to Timothy with grace and agility and strapped herself in. Mum climbed into the driver's seat and turned the engine on. "Are you ready, girl?" she asked. "Is that a joke?" Erica replied, considering she had been ready for the last 2 hours. "Sorry," Mum sniggered, and they set off. It was literally a 4-minute drive to school, and as they pulled up outside Berriton Primary, Erica saw streams of children heading through the front gates. They all had different coloured coats, hats and scarves on, and Erica was pleased she hadn't let her mum buy purple ones, as she would have looked like a plonker. She undid her seatbelt and pulled her grey bobble hat down just a little bit further as Mum opened the door next to her and held her hand out. "Mum, I can manage to get out of the car," Erica hissed, and jumped out quickly before Mum could respond. Mum unstrapped Timothy and popped him onto the pavement whilst holding tightly onto his hand. Erica, Mum and Timothy walked down the pavement together and through the gates. "Good morning," said a young man standing by the gate. Erica looked up and he smiled down at her. "You must be Erica. I'm Mr. Whiteley, the deputy head. It's so lovely to meet you at last." Mr. Whiteley held out his hand and Erica's mum shook it. Then he waved at a lady across the playground and kind of gestured for her to come over, which she did. As she got closer, Erica could see that she too was young, very young in fact. and very pretty. She had a heart-shaped face and very long brown hair which almost reached her bottom. She was wearing a knee-length dress covered in a busy print that, on closer inspection, Erica could see were tiny little flowers of all different colours. She was wrapped in an oversized cardigan which she was holding closely round herself. She looked cold. In almost identical wording as the deputy head, the pretty young teacher reached her hand down and introduced herself. "Hello, you must be Erica. I'm Miss Hart, your class teacher. We are very much looking forward to you joining us this term. Come on in. It's rather chilly out here." Erica gave her mum a quick nod goodbye and took Miss Hart's proffered hand, and in they went. Erica felt a bit nervous walking down the unfamiliar corridors, past classrooms full of children milling around inside. She saw a few doors open and glimpsed a computer room, a library, and what was most certainly the headmistress's office. She hadn't met the headmistress yet, but knew her name was Miss Cobb and had been told by her mum that she was very nice. Suddenly Miss Hart came to a stop outside a classroom door which was unexpectedly closed. The door was purple, like a lot of the decor in Brereton Primary, and embellished with stars of every colour of the rainbow. It looked magical. Miss Hart knocked on the door, which Erica thought was rather strange, considering she was the class teacher. Then, after a few seconds and a lot of scuffling noises inside, she opened the door and led Erica inside. Now this is the moment that all new children dread. The classroom went silent, and all the children looked around at Miss Hart and Erica. "Come on now, back to work, please," Miss Hart scolded the children gently. Then she showed Erica to an empty desk, and Erica sat down. Erica noticed a word search on the table in front of her and reached out to find a pencil. The classroom looked like any other classroom in any other primary school. There were tables in groups of 4 dotted around the room, with 4 little blue chairs around each table. In the centre of each table were 2 pencil pots, one for colouring pencils and one for writing pencils, and a little rectangular rubber laying on its side next to the pots. Around the edge of the classroom there were lots of different areas to play in. They looked amazing. There was a reading corner with a comfy-looking story mat to sit on, a dressing-up area with lots of cloaks, hats, and a large gold-framed mirror, a role-play office with lots of post-it notes and notebooks to play with, and a wall covered with the children's lovely drawings and paintings, which had the title "Our Candy Wall" in pastel-coloured letters. "I wonder why it's called a candy wall," thought Erica. "Hi there," said a little girl sitting next to her. "I'm Emily. What's your name?" "I'm Erica," said Erica. "What an unusual name," answered Emily. "I don't think I know anyone else called Erica." "Until now," she smiled. Then Emily started pointing around the table at the other children. "This is David, and this is William W." "Hi," said both David and William W. simultaneously. "On that table," Emily said, showing Erica the table just behind David, "are Jack, Emmy, Lucy, and William M., but we call him Will." She gestured at the table over the other side of the room. "That's the boys' table. Ed, Roger, and John. Poor Nora has to sit with them too. She whinges about it all the time, but I like to play with her at playtime to cheer her up. She's my best friend." "Wow," said Erica. "There is no way I'm going to remember all those names." "Don't worry," said Miss Hart, wandering over. "You'll get to know everyone really quickly. This is a very special class." Then she stood up and raised her voice. "Now, how is everyone doing with their word searches?" Erica looked down at her own word search and noticed a pencil was lying on the piece of paper. How sweet of Emily to put it there. She picked it up and got to work. The children worked on their word searches for about 20 minutes before moving on to a piece of writing about their Christmas holiday. Erica was able to write all about her house move, her new bedroom, and her mum's new job. She was very proud of her work and was delighted when Miss Hart gave her a sticker for excellent writing. After that, it was snack and playtime. Emily showed Erica where to collect snack from, and they grabbed their coats, hats and scarves and bundled out into the playground with everyone else to meet up with Nora. "Erica, this is Nora," said Emily, introducing her 2 friends to each other. "Hey, Erica, great to meet you," replied Nora. "How's everything at the fun end of the classroom?" Erica laughed before replying. "Good, thanks. How about you? I hear you're on the boys' table." Huh, so you heard, grumbled Nora. It's not too bad. John and Ed are fine, but Roger has been talking like a pirate all morning because he's hurt his eye a few days ago and he needs to wear an eye patch. It's really annoying. I don't even think he needs the eye patch anymore. He just likes wearing it. The girls laughed together and munched on their crackers and cheese. They talked about their favourite TV shows, their favourite biscuits, and their least favourite boys in the class. When the bell rang, the three girls headed back into the classroom for maths. Erica was a hard worker and loved getting things right. But sometimes she found maths a little tricky. Her mum said it's perfectly normal to find some things tricky. Some children are amazing at running fast, but find reading difficult. And some children are brilliant at doing sums, but find drawing pictures really hard. If everyone was the same, Erica's mum always said, then the world would be a very boring place. Miss Hart taught the children about number bonds to 20, and now they were copying the number sentences into their maths books. 10 add 10 equals, then 11 add 9 equals, and so on. Erica had got as far as 15 add, but she wasn't sure what she needed to add to 15 to make 20. She seemed to remember that 5 and 5 made 10, so she decided that 15 and 15 must make 20. So she popped 15 into the gap. When it was time to go over the answers, Erica was pretty confident she had got them all correct and was happily ticking all the answers in a pretty pink crayon that Emily must have kindly popped onto her book when she wasn't looking a minute ago. Then Miss Hart read out the answer to 15 plus. It wasn't 15 and 15 after all. It was 15 and 5. Oh, how annoying. Erica hated getting things wrong, but she could just rub out the 15 and pop the 5 in place instead. Erica looked up to grab the little rectangular rubber she had seen in the middle of the table earlier. And to her surprise, she saw it had sprouted little legs and was walking across the table towards her. Erica screamed. It was a scream that could have curdled milk. It was a scream that could have shattered mirrors. It was a scream that could have been heard on the moon. But the other children in the class didn't react. In fact, they smiled. David and William M were actually laughing. Emily was saying something to Erica, but she couldn't hear what she was saying because all she could hear was her own scream in her ears and her heart beating. It's okay, said Miss Hart, coming straight over to Erica and putting her arm around her. It's okay, Erica, sweetheart. It's only rub-rub. Didn't anyone tell you? Rub-rub? Tell me what? Erica stammered. Miss Hart looked crossly at Emily, then at all the other children in the classroom. Are you telling me that none of you told Erica? The children all looked down at the ground and mumbled different things under their breath. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. Erica, continued Miss Hart. Remember I told you this class is very special? Yeah, Erica managed to answer. Well, it's not just the children who are special. The classroom is special too. It's enchanted. Do you know what enchanted means, Erica? Does it mean magical? Asked Erica, managing to get her breath back under control. Yes, Erica, that's exactly what it means, reassured Miss Hart kindly. This classroom is magical, and every day amazing and exciting things happen. We are incredibly lucky, Erica, and now you get to share it all with us too. Miss Hart reached down to the little rubber, who was now sitting on his bottom next to Erica's maths book, looking a little bewildered. It's all right, Rub-Rub, she said, scratching him on the top of his head, his little rubbery head. You did a great job coming to help Erica. Well done, little man. Now, come on, rub out that 15 for her so she can pop the right answer in. Rub-Rub hopped onto the book and got to work whilst Erica watched with her mouth hanging open. That was only the first fantastical thing that happened to Erica in the Enchanted classroom. There were many more to come, many adventures, amazements, and magical moments. And I do hope you will continue to listen to our assemblies to enjoy them with us.